Let me take a minute. I want to introduce Peter Barka, who's been a friend for years. If you go to the 1st Congressional District, which I think was the best when I lived there, I'm not sure. But Peter has been a friend of not only the Democratic Party and organized labor and teachers and firefighters and everyone else, but he is a person of great integrity. He has to get back to the legislature for a caucus, and so we're going to ask him if he would come up and say a few words right now. Please welcome Peter Barka.
Well, thank you so very much, and a round of applause to Ed Garvey. Who else can organize things as well as Ed Garvey? I mean, how terrific. What a great idea to bring people back together. I know Sarah Mansky did something similar right during the middle of the protests, and now that we're moving forward, I'm so pleased that a leader like Ed Garvey that for so long has helped to push forward Wisconsin values and creative ideas and set the direction that Wisconsin's course should be on, is back at it, working hard, and as he always does. So first of all, thanks to each and every one of you. I know that we would not be in the place that we're at, meaning that counting the 1 million plus signatures that we have, were it not for each and every one of you that kept up the faith about what Wisconsin's values truly are. So I appreciate so very much, because I know so many of you are out in cold weather, we're out stopping traffic, we're out collecting signatures in adverse conditions, and what a remarkable time for Wisconsin. I mean, it's so important, the work that you're doing, because obviously the people who are in charge are the people who have defiled our heritage. They're the people who trample on Wisconsin values. And it's not in keeping with who we are as a people. And so I know today is really more about not who will be the standard bearer, but what will be the standard. More about not who's going to be the messenger, but what is the message. Not so much about political promises, but how and where is the path to get back to the promised land and the land that we all revere, this progressive state of Wisconsin. So I've got a few things to say about that, as you might guess. It's been an incredible year as the Assembly Democratic leader. Obviously, we've been in the middle of the battle, and we've been able to see the passion and the fire in the citizens of this state's eyes as they came to the Capitol, as they were so upset with the direction they were going in, almost in disbelief, as all of us were. I was there, of course, and a big part of helping to organize the longest debate ever, 61 hours, when they tried to end 50 years of important history and important values that we believe in, which is that we all sit at the table and negotiate together and have a stake in the direction of our workplace in a direction that this state is pursuing. And of course, it was all of you that filled the hearing halls when they so abruptly ended the Joint Finance Committee hearing to have over 1,000 hours of testimony, that it was each and every one of you that were there at 2, 3, 5 in the morning offering some of the most compelling testimony that we've ever heard. And so I think that you have to take stock, where are we at? And really my colleague Mark Pocan said it so well. We're in the land of Fitzwalkerstan. And what does that mean? It's a land totally unfamiliar to us. It's policies that are unimaginable, that we never could have dreamt anybody would even dare bring forward in Wisconsin, and some policies anywhere in the United States. It's a remarkable period that we're in. Somebody stole the sacred land called Wisconsin with all of our values and our proud heritage, and we want it back. And we're going to get it back. Yes. And so let me say a couple words about where I think we're at. Because, you know, 1 million plus signatures that you all worked so hard to gather, in 60 days no less, is nothing to sneeze at. That represents 95% of the vote that Tommy Thompson, the longest serving governor, got in his last campaign. represents 104% of the vote that the last Republican that ran for governor, Mark Green, got. But we also know, on the other end of the equation, that they are doing everything they can to pass policies to suppress voting, to limit people's access to the ballot box. So we know that our work is cut out for us. We also know that as hard as we all worked, and it was a remarkable achievement, that's only phase one. Phase two, which is the hard work ahead, to ensure that people show up at the ballot box to finish the job, that's going to be equally as difficult. You know, it reminds me when we first started this session, and we had our leadership elections, and we were talking about running and who's going to be the leader, assistant leader, caucus chair. And I said, you know, it reminds me of Winston Churchill in May 13th of 1940, that all we have to offer is blood, toil, tears, and sweat. But the most important point of that speech that he said is that he believed would be the start of Britain's finest hour. And I believe when we reverse course again and go back to that heritage, that'll be one of Wisconsin's finest hours. And I think we all want to be in the middle of that debate, in the middle of that fight, in the middle of the effort. Now, it's clear where we want to go. It's absolutely crystal clear. We want to end this land of Fitzwalker stand. We want to end the damage that's been done. We want to, secondly, go to the other goal where we can have a governor that's going to say, no, I don't want to centralize power for every rule in Wisconsin in my office. No, I don't want to end 37 public servants and make them political servants, looking out for our interests. And then third, where we really want to be, is we want to be at the point where we're pushing forward progressive values, that we're using our heritage to ensure that we move forward as we thought we would have in January with things like wind energy, with things like solar energy, with ending $12 to $15 billion a year that we send outside of our state to power our plants and our homes and our cars. Those are the policies. That's what this state is all about. We want to make sure we go back to the idea of clean and open and transparent government. We want to go back to the idea and promote the idea that we can advance policies to maintain a pristine environment in this state. We want to make sure that we're not kicking 60,000 people off of Badger Care, but we're adding people that need help with Badger Care. We know that's where we want to be. That's goal 3. But you know, we don't get to goal 2 and goal 3 until we accomplish goal 1. And the part I have to say is this will not be easy. It should be easy, right? The thing I keep asking myself, you know, I saw that Marquette poll that came out last week, and I look at it and I think, how could this be possible? How could it be that even 30% of Wisconsinites would continue to support somebody with the agenda that has been advanced, with the values that have been disregarded, with the approach to government that has been so disheartening? How is that possible? Now, clearly, and you know what, that's our simple temptation to say, well, it's a bad poll. And you know what, I don't actually believe it's a bad poll. Now, I believe that obviously when you have $3 to $5 million worth of ads, that, you know, without a response, where he can tell people fantasies like, you know, he's added thousands of jobs and, you know, that he's balanced the budget, that he tells the voters all the time, even though they certified to the Department of Health and Human Service federally that we don't have a balanced budget, and that's why we got to throw 30,000 kids off of Badger Care. When you can tell a fantasy in a vacuum, that helps your story, of course. And that won't be a vacuum for long. But the only reason why I bring this up is I think that we do have an important job in front of us. Because I think not all people know. As I've traveled the state, you know, during the special elections and campaigning during the recalls, whether in La Crosse or, you know, up in Green Bay or wherever I was at in the state, it's clear to me that while I'll bet you all of you in this room probably know 75% of what's been done, because it's hard to keep up with it. I don't think I know 100% of what's been done, because they try to hide it, and they do an effective job at that. But what I think we need is we need sunshine. We need to make sure that people understand all that's been done. Now, let me just tell you one other thing, just a simple solution that I intend to post in the next 24 hours, is I think that we need to give people a simple test. Because if you ask people a simple 15-question test, you'll find out immediately whether they truly believe in Badger values or not. And just let me put forward just a few of those questions, because I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think it's important that if we continuously are reaching out to people and making them understand what actually has transpired over the course of the last year, if they truly look at just some of the basic things, and this isn't even all of it, these are just some of the more compelling things that he's done. But can you imagine? I mean, do you believe, in selling power plants without bids? What's the answer? No, hell no, right? I mean, do you believe that we should cut $1.6 billion, that we should pull $1.6 billion out of the education system so that the surveys show that 2/3 of the state now are either in larger class sizes or have fewer course offerings? So we go from being #1 in graduation rates to have an equally high number, #2 in the number of cuts to education. Do we believe in that? No, hell no, right? Do we believe in the idea of dismantling the UW system that was put together 40 years ago, that one of the jewels, not only in the nation, but in the world? Do we believe in that? No, of course not, right? Do we believe in ending 50 years of collective bargaining? No. I mean, do we believe in turning back federal funds so that so that things like just having data in terms of people that are on Medicare, but more important than that, in terms of being able to put forward a health information system that even Rick Perry in Texas felt would be important for small businesses? Do we believe in that? No, of course not. And, the list goes on and on and on. And it is so compelling. Do we believe in ending 30 years of recycling in Wisconsin? No, hell no. Now, if you give people these simple questions, 15 of them I've come up with, just off the top of my head, that just are so incredibly compelling. If anybody cannot say no to at least a dozen of them, well, then they're probably not Badgers to begin with. I mean, we're not going to win them. But the issue is that if people understand the depth of what's been done, I mean, do we believe in the notion of ending First Amendment rights to pass out flyers without a permit? I mean, who would ever imagine that any governor anywhere in the United States of America, any political person anywhere in this country would dare even suggest that you need to have a permit in order to pass out flyers in the Capitol Square? It's unimaginable. And yet, this is what Governor Walker puts forward. And I think if you ask people, and it's important that we're talking to people, that we're communicating with people, not just all of us in the room, but talking to so many people that you meet at grocery stores, because I think so many people don't even realize the depth and the breadth of the values that have been so disregarded and trampled upon, that we just believe are so sacred to our traditions. And if people understand it, how could more than 1/3 of the people possibly support that type of agenda? I just don't think it's possible, quite frankly. But that's our job, and it's not an easy job, because obviously he already has, had 12 million, 14 million and counting, and there won't be for lack of money. And he'll run ad after ad after ad that he created thousands of jobs, when the truth is 6 months in a row, 6 months in a row, we have lost jobs. The only state with that type of a record. It's unbelievable almost. And yet, who would even have the audacity to be able to put out an ad saying you're creating thousands of jobs with that type of record? Who would have the audacity to tell everybody, yep, I have finally balanced the budget, and then certify a letter to say that the budget is not balanced and we've got to throw 3,000 kids off of Badger Care? And that's the message that has to be conveyed so strongly. And I think when people understand that, and then they'll see an alternative. They'll see an alternative of somebody that, whoever that nominee might be, will believe in Badger values, that'll support an agenda that we know fits Wisconsin. So I just want to end by saying, I appreciate so much all of your efforts. I wish I could tell you that I thought the next 4 or 5 months will be easy, but I don't think it will be easy. And I think if we let down our guard even one bit, we will not be successful, unless he's indicted first, which is entirely possible. But short of that, we know our job ahead is hard. The road is going to be rough, but 1 million plus people are with us. We have to make sure they vote, and we have to talk to the others that we see in the grocery stores and on the streets that I just think do not understand the depth and the breadth of how they defiled our values and our heritage. So thank you so much. Great to be with you all, and hope to see you all soon.
Doug Follette, please welcome Doug Follette.
I'll never be forgiven for butting in front of John. I shouldn't start telling stories, but I met him when he was in junior high school. Can I tell the story? Of course. Yes. And I was a professor at Parkside down in Racine and Kenosha, and I decided to run against a right-wing Republican congressman named Henry Shatterberg. And Union Grove, where John lived, and his father, who was a very honorable and wonderful community person for many years, got involved in my campaign. So he was my campaign manager for Union Grove when he was in junior high school. And I taught him everything no, wait a minute. He taught me everything. Anyway, it's great to be here and to have participated in these forums to the best I could, going around and listening. And spent most of my time in the environmental forum, which has been one of my long-term loves, as you all know. I suppose some of you have forgotten that I started a group called Clean Wisconsin many years ago. We called it Wisconsin Environmental Decade because we thought a decade would be enough to fix things. After our wonderful and honorable Senator Gaylord Nelson created the first Earth Day, and we thought the 1970s would be it, and we could all go hiking again, but didn't work out that way. We had some problems along the way, and we're still at it. And they changed their name from Environmental Decade to Clean Wisconsin because no one could figure out about Environmental Decade anymore. Okay, very briefly, I spoke last week at an alternate State of the State event. They asked me to give my opinion of the state of the state. And what I said is the state of our state is not good. It's been hijacked by the Koch brothers and millions of dollars of out-of-state money. But then I went on to say, take heart. The state of the people is great. Yes. And it is so manifest. It was so manifest by the thousands of people in the cold weather against all adversity who worked in a short time and collected almost 2 million signatures to let the people know that they were there and they are in good condition. If you want to hear more of my comments or see them, you can look at my website, douglafollette.com, where there's things you can read about my speech that I gave on the state. I won't go into that now. But I've never been as proud in my 40-some years in state politics of the hundreds of people, thousands of people that collected those signatures. And I met with some of them, and I talked with them, and I helped them when I could around the state. Now, and while you're here, we must not let that magnificent effort go in vain. And it would be, I mean, I could not get up in the morning for weeks if we failed to follow through on that and got rid of our current governor. So the challenge we have, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and you have been thinking about it as well, and Ed and John have been thinking about it, is that how can we determine who would be the strongest candidate? All the Democrats have some negatives, including me. Possibly Herb Kohl might be an exception to that, and as a candidate, he might be very successful and probably would be a fine governor. He doesn't want to run, he says, so we'll see. I also have some very important positives. I mean, I have statewide identification. That's a factor to be considered. I've got strong support among independents and liberal Republicans. I'm not seen as a Democrat. That irritates the Democrats sometimes, but that's okay. And I have a record of winning. I mean, I won statewide elections 4 times when Tommy Thompson won. And I won a year ago when, who knows, what's his name won. So what I've suggested in a number of places on my website, and when reporters asked me, there was reporters asked me a few minutes ago what I thought, somehow we need to create several good statewide polls, independent polls, not promoting this candidate or that candidate, to find out exactly who has strong negatives and positives among the 6 or 7 or 8 viable Democratic candidates, and pair them up between, Jones versus Walker, Smith versus Walker, Peter Barka versus Walker, Douglas Follette versus Walker, John Nickel versus Walker. No. I'm going to be in trouble now. Now, if we had 2 or 3 such good polls, would that eliminate a primary election? Maybe not. It might, maybe not. But what it would do, it would allow the Democratic folks that are thinking about running, including myself, to decide, no, we're not a viable candidate, and step aside. And I would do that. I mean, if I saw that I wasn't a viable candidate, I'm not going to waste your time. I'll step aside and support someone who can beat Walker. That's the goal. Now, another thing very briefly, and this is so important and it's been talked about here this afternoon, is Ed Garvey recently made a comment or a suggestion, I'm not sure, probably a comment, that we can't raise money to compete. Ed's tried it several times. I've tried it several times at different positions, and we'll never be able to raise the kind of money to be competitive against the folks who we have to defeat. So what Ed said, maybe we should give up. Don't try to raise money. Go out with the people and win the elections. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And I tend to agree with what Ed said. And I compliment him for having the candor to raise that issue. How about this idea? If everyone who signed the petition sent in $10 or $20, that would raise enough money for a good base campaign. And then we never raise the millions from the Koch brothers and those guys, but it would have a baseline campaign that we needed for the signs, the communication, the things you need to run a base statewide campaign. And if I was involved, I would limit any campaign contribution to me to $20. That's it, $20, no more. And I think if we had enough people involved, we'd have enough for that base campaign, and let Walker spend his 20, 30, 40 million of out-of-state money, and we can defeat them with the kind of things that I've heard here talked about as well. What do you all think? I'd be interested in that. Well, in conclusion, my strong desire is to defeat Walker. I don't need to be governor to fulfill my life. But we need to have the candidate who is the strongest person to defeat Walker possible. I want to take back Wisconsin for the people. Now, some say I'd be a very different governor. I mean, first I might be the first governor to walk to work every day, and I get a little flack about that. I remember when John Nichols defended me one time for walking to work and back and leaving my car parked. Heaven forbid, what a crime. Secretary of State lets his car parked for 2 weeks at a time and walks to work. And I thank John for his comments on that. But more importantly, I would listen to the people of Wisconsin, not to the Koch brothers. So it's great to be here and to listen to your ideas and to help work on this project of ours, to not let those people's work go in vain, and to replace Wisconsin's leadership with leadership of the people and by the people and for the people. That's the goal of this legislature that Ed has gotten started, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. Please welcome Kathleen Falk.
I want to thank the folks from Black River Falls that are here. You probably see them wandering around in orange t-shirts. And my story kind of starts with where I saw them last, which was on Thursday night. We had this "We Did It" rally in Black River Falls. And the two co-chairs got up and said a little bit about what it felt to be here in Madison and to carry the box. And you've heard, or maybe some of you actually are, one of the legendary box carriers. It was you were. Raise your hand if you were a legendary box carrier. Give those folks a round of applause. Well, see if I honor what that legendary box carrier role was. And this I have to give credit to Sheila and Danielson in Black River Falls. She shared with us. She said she felt this tremendous responsibility when she carried the box from the U-Haul truck up to the Government Accountability Board. And she said, when I picked up that box, it was very, very heavy. And think about it. It contained all of the despair over how lives had been changed because of the loss of a job, because of the loss of health insurance, because of the loss of a home, because of the loss of a long-term relationship, because of the loss of their people's very security. But she said, as I walked, I realized those signatures meant so much more. They represented people's hopes, people's dreams, people's dedication, and most importantly, they represented people taking back their power. 1 million of us taking back our power. And she said, as I climbed the stairs to the GAB, the box was as light as a feather. And the world saw the fruits of our labor when those petitions were delivered. And I would think the man that John Nichols invoked, and Ed Garvey represents, I would think the man that first brought that idea of a recall in the Constitution before the legislature in 1905, Governor Bob La Follette, would indeed be very proud of what we accomplished, wouldn't you say? Now, Bob La Follette knew that road to reform was very long and very torturous. Remember, it took him 10 long years to be able to become governor, to take on fighting the trusts, which we kind of know as the really, really big corporations today. He only served as governor for 6 years, but he ushered in a new beginning that became our Wisconsin. He laid that groundwork that brought us, made Wisconsin the birthplace of progressive politics and all of the progressive ideas that we know and love. And you know them all, but the first kindergarten, and of course, as Senator Risser likes to remind me, when he was a young lad, the beginning of public employee collective bargaining. That is our progressive history. And I believe Wisconsin will not be the death of workers' rights. Instead, it will be the rebirth of democracy in this nation. Because democracy is not dead, it is alive and well in Wisconsin. And we will demonstrate, and we already have begun to demonstrate, what Governor La Follette used to say over and over again. The cure for the ills of democracy is more democracy. Today, I believe Wisconsin is at a crossroads. We can go down the path of Scott Walker, down the path of deceit and destruction, down the path of corruption and cronyism, of the fraying of the social safety net, down the path of destroying our public structures like public education, and down the path of 6 straight months of job loss. You all heard about that. That the governors, maybe you'd heard my comments after the State of the State. The governor took credit for all of these jobs he's created. Well, did you know that in our neighboring states, they've done a better job creating jobs for Wisconsin workers, get this, Wisconsin workers, than Governor Walker. In fact, 85% of the jobs that have been created in the last year from December to December in Wisconsin, 85% of them have been people in Wisconsin working outside of the state to get a job.
In fact, the governors in our surrounding states are 6 times more likely to create jobs for Wisconsinites than our own governor. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let us give a big thank you to the governors of our surrounding states for employing the people in Wisconsin. Now, we can continue down that path of division and deceit and economic stagnation and cronyism and corruption, or we can choose a better way. With leaders who put relentless pursuit of the common good above all. Let me repeat that because it's such an odd phrase for a politician to say. With leaders who put relentless pursuit of the common good above all. We do need a new beginning in Wisconsin politics and government. We must work together to heal those divisions among us, to respect each other despite our differences, and as we debate our differences. We absolutely must stop pitting business and labor against each other. We must stop pitting the private sector and the public sector against each other. The public sector can't exist without the private sector. The private sector can't exist without the public sector. We are all in this together, and all of us are suffering. And we need everyone's best efforts together to build those kind of communities that we really do want to live in and play in and raise a family and run a business. And we need everybody's best efforts together to make those communities that we know and love and want to continue. That's why I believe Wisconsin does need a fresh start. We need a whole new way of doing government. We need new leaders, and we need to lift up the voices of the people. And as we just heard, we need a governor who is willing to be the servant of the people and serve the will of the people. As is written on the wall, on the ceiling, in the governor's conference room, the will of the people is the law of the land. We need a governor who will govern with self-restraint. Something you don't hear about much in Wisconsin. We need a governor who will be truthful about her intentions. We need a governor who respects Wisconsin's traditions of good government, of openness, of full participation with everyone at the table, of following the rules. Now, Bob Follette knew the road to reform was not going to be easy. And right now we face, as you heard this morning, Mike McCabe told you, we face an opposition that is going to be the most well-funded in Wisconsin's history. Money buys slick brochures. Money buys baseless lies. Money buys those nasty, nasty ads. And money buys the vote of the uninformed. But, as I just told the television station, we have something that is proving to be far more powerful than money. We have the power of the people. And just like the Wisconsin 14, we must all muster that courage and determination to take a bold step to help open the eyes of our brothers and sisters to what is happening to our great state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very important task ahead of us. We must inform, we must educate, and we must motivate. Wisconsin is ground zero. The fight in Wisconsin is for all of the marbles, and our opponents are playing for keeps. We must take back our power. And remember, no one gives you power. You must take it. And when we take back our power, we not only take it back for ourselves, we take it back for our children, for our grandchildren, for our friends and family and neighbors that are struggling just to get by, for our communities that really do want to work together. And we have the courage to do this, and we have the determination to do this. And I believe we will do this one neighborhood at a time, starting right here in Madison. Thank you very much.
I have the pleasure of introducing someone I worked with when she was the public intervener for the state of Wisconsin, who set standards for how government should operate to protect the environment, and is a person that is of unquestioned integrity. Please welcome Kathleen Falk.
It is great to be here in a room full of friends. Ruth, John, you make us proud when we see you on the national stage, representing us revolutionaries here. Thank you for all you are doing. We are so honored and grateful. Ed, for not only starting the People's Legislature and fighting Bob, but he is not going to give up. He is not going to rest until we have won. So join me, please, in thanking them for all they have done nationally in the state. You know, I'm running for governor because, like you and 1 million of us strong, I can't sit by and let Governor Scott Walker take our state to the bottom. I can't sit back and watch Scott Walker tear our state apart, where family member doesn't talk to family member, neighbor to neighbor. I won't let's stand by and watch Scott Walker pit union worker against non-union worker. I will not stand back and let Scott Walker pit big tax breaks for corporations against funding for schools and health care. I will not sit back and watch Scott Walker pit billionaires from Texas against kids and families in Wisconsin. I can't sit back and watch Scott Walker take our state for the last 6 months in a row with job losses month after month, the worst in the nation. Under Scott Walker's agenda, he hasn't made us better, he has made us worse. I cannot sit back. You know, maybe Scott Walker is running to be the governor of Texas, Missouri, New York, but it isn't us in Wisconsin he's fighting for. You know, on the very same day that 1 million people, having spent 2 months in the cold, in the snow, in the wind, missing Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners with their families, come to Madison and file those 1 million signatures. On that very same day, we do that historic, inspiring, brave action. Where is Governor Walker? New York, at a fundraiser hosted by the former head of AIG, who last I recall, all of us taxpayers bailed out. He's not fighting for us. He's not on our side. You know, if you look back at this year, who could have foreseen what would happen to our state? Who could have foreseen? It started very in the beginning in January, when he first did those big tax breaks that are going to total $2 billion over the next decade. And how did he fund that? With the biggest cuts in education in our state's history. With a $500 million cut to Medicare, which 1 out of 5 of us need. But throwing 60,000 people, many of them women and kids, off of their health care. That's where he started. But then he told us if we stuck with him, if we took the medicine of his very extreme far-right agenda, that we'd be better at the end. And here we are, 13 months later, and what do we have to show for it? Bigger class sizes, fewer teachers, people without the health care they need, and 6 straight months of job losses. Wrong choices and assaulting every value we care about, whether it's the environment and rolling back the environmental laws that the Republicans and Scott Walker are doing, whether it's the anti-voting rights legislation they are passing, whether it's their hostility to women and our right to choose. That list is long. But on every value we hold dear in our state, he has made the wrong choices. And on top of this, if that couldn't be bad enough, we have seen now this cloud over the last month of indictments, of felony charges, of arrest for those top aides closest to him. his top aides being accused of stealing money from, of all people, kids and families of veterans. Or, most recently last week, his top aides that are just in offices away from him in his county executive office, a shouting distance, a voice distance from him, who are accused of spending about half of their time on county dime, on taxpayer dime, doing political campaigning work to increase his political power. In Wisconsin, in this year, in this day and age, after all we have went through with the caucus scandals, this is not a governor who's fighting for us. We know there is a better way. We've seen a better way. And I know from all my friends and faces here in this room, we have all been fighting our lives for a better way. You know, I was born in Milwaukee. I'm the granddaughter of a bus driver. Later on, we moved out to Waukesha, very rural Waukesha, where when I was 8 years old, and this, of course, is in 1959, when I was 8 years old, I started a conservation club. That's not what kids did back then, let alone girls. But I started a conservation club because that's what I cared about, protecting the outdoors. And so then when I became of age, like all of you, it was Watergate and the Vietnam War and the very first Earth Day and civil rights for women, for people of color. And you remember what was happening in our country. It was exploding. And like you, I loved my country and was angry about the decisions it made. So I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to change the world. And what I did then was go to law school. I only knew one lawyer, a girlfriend's dad. But I knew that's where you can get the tools to change the world. Got out of law school here, but while in law school, I volunteered for a brand new group then called Wisconsin's Environmental Decade. And you'll remember why we named ourselves that. Because we thought it would just take a decade to clean things up. Mistake number one. But there I was, then graduating from law school when the environmental laws were just beginning and arguing cases in the state Supreme Court 3 months out of law school, taking on those big, powerful interests. I loved doing it. And I got to help citizens all across the state protect the corners of the world that we love the most. Then I became one of your 2 public interveners, and for the next 12 years, I helped citizens in every corner of the state. And you'll remember I won a few too many times, because then what Governor Thompson had to do is axe the public intervener office. And that's when citizens in Dane County said, Falk, you got to run for county executive. And I said, I'm the outsider shaking up the system. But you knew that what you wanted me to do is to protect our natural resources, our lakes, our 2,500 farms. And I appreciated that, but the other reason I ran is because, as many of you know, I'm the mom of this fabulous 31-year-old son. And unlike him, we live in a neighborhood where kids had nothing. And year after year of having kids live with us and having nothing and being homeless, I wanted to do something to move a sea of kids out of poverty, and that's why I ran for county executive. And then you elected me, the first woman, but you kept re-electing me. So I served the historic length of the Dane County executive, the second longest serving county executive in the state. And under that, what we did together was we moved a progressive agenda year after year after year, and we did it the right way, by talking to people, by listening to people, by bringing people together. So we've got the strongest, only, or best environmental laws in the nation and the state on a whole barometer. We've got a reformed criminal justice system that today, despite the fact there are 100,000 more citizens in this county than there were 15 years ago, our jail population is lower because we reformed the criminal justice system by doing it right and working with people. We created programs that move families up the ladder and out of poverty by helping them get a job and keeping it. We did innovative things that people had never seen before, like building manure digesters that keep our lakes clean, that let our dairy herds grow, that produce green energy and green paying jobs, and it's the first, and I hope it's one of many in the state. That's the kind of progressive agenda you can move when you bring people together, and I know how to balance a budget and do it year in and year out, and didn't do it on the backs of 2,500 county employees. Did it by working with them. And I am so proud of the fact that 3 years in a row, they came to the table And they agreed to concessions that saved taxpayers $10 million. I am proud of them. They stayed on their jobs. They're doing the hard work of deputies and snowplow drivers and social workers that go into dangerous homes. They're out there working for you. That's how you get things done. And in this day and age, when we know the solutions to problems are working together, are being innovative, are trying new things, and when they say you can't do it, we say, yes, we can, that's the kind of governor I will be. Now, we are out here to win this election. We have no time to lose or waste while Governor Walker continues his far-right extreme agenda. We've done this first really hard, historic, inspiring task of getting 1 million signatures, and now we've got to go the next. We've now got to redouble our efforts and work as hard as we possibly can over the next few months, and the Republicans are going to throw everything at us because that's what they do. They're going to try to delay, right? They're going to think we're going to get tired. When we started the recall, they said, oh, this will never get off the ground. It's summer and people will go on vacation. Did we prove them wrong? Yes. Then they said, oh, well, they'll never get 540,000 signatures. Just think of that. Did we prove them wrong? Yes. And then when we stunned them with 1 million signatures, they took a different tack. They ran off to courts. And they ran out of state to collect a whole lot of money. But is that going to daunt us? No. The values we all grew up with, that I learned early and I know all you did, was once you've lost somebody's trust, there is no amount of money that buys it back. So he can raise as much money as he could possibly spend, but he has lost the trust of Wisconsin citizens, and that's why I know we will win. They're already throwing everything at us. They're saying a Dane County liberal can't win. Well, has they ever heard of Russ Feingold, our friend? Yes. They're saying a Dane County liberal can't win because what they're afraid of is a Dane County liberal can win. 6 years ago, I got 1,056,000 votes. That's 50,000 more votes than our Democratic candidate for governor last year. We know we elect Dane County liberals statewide in this state. People are tired of politics as usual. You've heard me say this my whole life. I don't like politics. But I learned early on that if we want to change the world, then this is where we need to be. And that's why you're here, and that's why you've been doing it your whole lives. I don't think anybody in this room likes politics. I sure don't like politics as usual. And I've been spending my life changing that. We now have this historic challenge before us. He had his moment 13 months ago. This is our moment. We know we will take back our government, one of transparency, of fairness. We will restore and undo the harm he has done to our state. And we will keep fighting until we do. Are you ready? Let's go get them. Let's renew our commitment today to join forces so that we take back our state. The People's Legislature is going to need to meet again next year and the year after and the year after, because we know that there is no one moment when our work is done. And I have spent my whole life fighting. I am eager to go to bat for you. I will work as hard as I possibly can, as I have over this last year. And as I have told people from one end of this state to the other, as we were gathering those signatures, and they worried about whether they were alone in Ashland, or whether they were alone on the south side of Milwaukee in a Latino community, or whether they were alone in Oshkosh, what I reminded and showed them and told them was stories that there are people all over this state just like us. Whether it was the young Latino in Milwaukee who's in college and said, I'm worried I'm not going to get through college because of the tuition increases and the cuts in aid, or the young man in Brewer on the other end of the state who said, I want to be a teacher, and I'm at UW Superior, and 14 of my classmates that wanted to be teachers have dropped out. We are united here in what we care about in Wisconsin. We have always watched each other's back. And I'm going to end with a story that reminds me most of that. When I was your public intervener, fighting the expansion of the South Belt Line, I was getting beat up bad. And I had just become the public intervener. And at the same time that I had just become the public intervener, this man to my left, who you know, had just become the Deputy Attorney General. Now, frequently the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General over time, sometimes he really didn't want to know what the public intervener is doing. But this Deputy Attorney General not only wanted to know what we were doing, but was really proud of what we were doing. So it was one night, it was darn cold, and there was going to be a meeting where a whole bunch of folks were going to beat me up. And I remember telling him, because he was my boss, that that was what was going to happen. And so that he would be forewarned, and when he got those phone calls, he would know it had happened. And instead of that, he said, well, I think I ought to come with you. Somebody ought to watch your back. That's what this room has been doing their whole lives for us, for each other, and for the 5.5 million people that couldn't come here today. That's why I know we will win, because we're watching each other's backs. And Walker can spend $50 million, but it will not buy back the trust of 5 million citizens. Thanks for all you're doing. Let's go get them.